Hey guys, welcome back to the Edge podcast. I actually think this is the first podcast we're doing under Edge. We have our coach Ben Townley with us today, so we're going to have a chat with Ben and catch up with him and see what's going on in his world.
Howdy,
First time
boys.
I've ever met you, Ben. Nice to meet you, dude.
Yeah, likewise, mate. I don't know what time in the world it is where you are. We're all over the place, the three of us, I guess.
Yeah, so right now I'm in New Zealand, Ben's in the States, Ben's in France and Adam's in the States, so all different time periods at the moment. Ben's just come back from a big day of driving. So yeah, let's get into it, I guess. So you're over in France at the moment, Ben?
Yeah, I just got back to Europe. I spent last year in Europe with my boys, or our whole family did actually, and then we went home to New Zealand for 6 months or so, and now back here for second year. Levi, my oldest son, he had a deal to race over here for a couple of years, doing that journey with him now. So it's crazy. It seems like I only retired from professional racing myself. It seems like only a few years ago, and now back here trying to do it all over again.
Man.
So you said you're in France right now. Is that where you stay every year that you go back over there, or have you kind of bounced around Europe and stayed in different places?
Well, no, actually, the team that he races for is based in France. That's why we're here. So I'd never really spent much time. I'd always been based when I was a racer in Belgium, so I'd never really been in this part of the world. So yeah, it's been a cool adventure for us just as a family, and that's why we're here back here in this part of Europe is because of Levi's team. So primarily, obviously, racing is all over Europe. Not just French based, but just with the team being here, it's why we're here.
Man,
Very cool.
that's so wild, eh? Like just to come back around that quick. Because when did you finish up? Like 2016, 2017?
Yeah, 2016. So 10 years
20...
or less. Yeah, so 9 years later, I was back over here doing it with my son. So it seems crazy.
Yeah, man, that's pretty wild, eh? So when you going back, if we go back to obviously back in your career, you were racing in Europe in, was it early 2000s, maybe 2002-ish? Is that when you started over there?
Yeah, 2001 was my first year. I was 16 when I started over here, yeah.
That was wild.
Dang.
And how long, so you lived in Belgium that whole time
No, actually,
when you were based over there?
I started in Germany.
Yeah.
Just the way that it was set up, the team I raced for, they were based in Germany. So I did about 6 or so months there. Then I got injured and that team actually folded. I got picked up by a team that was based in Belgium, and then I spent basically from that point on, the end of my first year, all the way through 5 years in Europe. So I lived in Belgium for those sort of 4.5 years after that. It was at the time it was probably the sort of center of racing. It would be like Southern California would have been for Supercross, Motocross, race teams. That was like the hub for racing in Europe and Belgium, and obviously the teams and riders and trainers and coaches and everyone were based in that area, and so that's why I was just sort of like a sheep, followed everyone there, and that's where I learnt my craft was living there, and then from there, so I spent 5 years, and then I went and spent 5 years in Florida after that. So that was sort of the main part of my career, was those two areas.
When you first went to Belgium, you said you started in 2001. You were 16. You were on that team for about 6 months. It folded. So about 17 when you moved. You were about 17 when you moved to Belgium?
Yeah, I was.
And did you stay there like entirely for 5 years? Did you go back and forth to New Zealand much? Or like, were you just fully like, peace out, New Zealand, here, I live in Belgium now?
Nah, I did. I traveled back and forth. Oh, it was, I guess, a summer type of a setup, right? So I would race the season. I say summer. So I'd come home for the summers in New Zealand and then come back to Europe in the spring, summer, and then into
Yeah.
the autumn, and then come home again. So I probably lived, I don't know, you could say sort of 8 and 4, something like that, 9 and 3
Yeah.
sometimes. It just depended on, I guess, the more successful I became and went into factory teams, I needed to spend more time here testing and whatnot, so the time at home got shorter and shorter, which was certainly, that was something that I guess I really enjoyed, is being able to go home. I say home, like literally go home for a few months and enjoy that part. And obviously that was off season or and pre-season. So training and riding in New Zealand was super easy compared to what we're experiencing being back here at this time of the year. It's just crazy. We've come from, the height of New Zealand summer, which hasn't been the best summer, but still, albeit, coming from summer to winter, and the conditions they're dealing with over here, it's crazy, man. Crazy. I haven't seen the sun, and I've been here 4 days now.
Dude, I've been spending
and that's not a word of a lie.
I've been spending a bit of the beginning of my year in Germany doing some events, and same deal, dude. It's like I'm waking up every morning and it's just like this foggy darkness. I'm like, I haven't seen the sun the whole time I've been here, man. It's crazy.
No way.
I'm a super early riser. And I get up, at home 4:35 in the morning. The sun doesn't come up, or sorry, I shouldn't say sun. It's not daylight here until after 8 o'clock at the moment.
It's nuts. Yeah.
Crazy.
It's some dark
that makes
mornings.
it tough.
So when you first went over to Europe, you're obviously so young. Did you just kind of go it alone? Like, obviously you're over there with your boys now and you've got experience behind you, but like, how was it when you started out?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I got this opportunity that came up to race for that team. They were a startup team at the time, and just out of the blue got this. You know how just timing is everything in life, and I was obviously looking to try and become a professional. That was just my aim at the time then, was to become a professional. I didn't have goals set out to achieve what I ended up achieving. It was more like, I just want to race a dirt bike, that's what I want to do. And then this opportunity came up, and I basically traveled over with my mum, and she helped me get set up, in terms of just the basics of life. And then on a plane home, and that was just purely because my parents weren't in the position to be here like I am. So yeah, I was. My mum stayed for probably a month, helped me get set up, like I said, and then she went home, and I went on my way, and it was just such a journey, man. Like, it was amazing. People say, oh, it must have been so hard, but it genuinely wasn't at all hard for me, because it was just, I was living a dream. Either I was at school that year, which would have been I still had 2 years of school to go, or I was probably most likely going to work for my dad on a building site. So, or the option of being here and having a go at it and just making the most of it. And that's what I did.
It's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, to me, it was a no-brainer. And just in terms of like, this opportunity was here in front of me. I was 16 years old, and to me, it was like a dream come true. So to me, it was a no-brainer, yeah.
Very cool. Go ahead, Levi.
No, you go.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's pretty wild. I guess I had a similar but different thing when I started out too. I was 17 when I took off for freestyle motocross, and I basically jumped in a van with a guy. I had no idea who he was, drove all the way across country, did my first freestyle event, and then I was off to the races. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Like, I was still at least in the States, and you going all the way over to Europe, and then like being that young and being away. I remember my first couple years of like living away from home, and it was like I always felt the need. And looking back on it now, I was always kind of like going back home and checking in every once in a while. Like, I had this idea like, oh, I just left and I was gone. But then when I think about it, I'm like, man, I made a lot of trips back to Pittsburgh just to like check in at home. Like, you're so young. It's still like such a giant part of you. And man, you were all the way in Europe for 8 months straight. Like, that's pretty crazy. Mom came over. She taught you how to boil an egg, balance the checkbook, and then she had to go home.
Yeah. It's pretty much it, yeah, and turn the washing machine on. And
nice.
I think, like, it's crazy that you say it like that, because I was actually thinking about this today when I was driving all over France today, and, like, the world is such an easy place now with a smartphone, and, like, today you can hold up a phone to something here in a foreign language, and it'll tell you what it says. Like, there was none of that shit when
insane.
And then I guess the people before me, if you go way back, like, they probably had to come on a ship to get to Europe to go racing, So it's just such a different time. Time doesn't stand still, does it? And I think that's it is just so different, I guess, in that sense. But in saying that, like, I really enjoy doing it with my boys. Like, I'm in a position where I can come and do it with them, and they want to, obviously do the trade or the same type of profession that I was in, and that's their ambition and goals. And I feel really fortunate to be able to do it alongside them and help them and guide them. So with that being said, I wouldn't want to see them do it on their own, so such a tight knit family as well. So I couldn't see, even though Levi got that opportunity, I couldn't see myself saying, "Oh, bud, yeah, off you go, have a crack at it." To be honest.
Yeah.
I like myself doing that.
Yeah, that'd be tough. It's cool to have to be as skilled as you are in what they're doing and be able to share that with your kids. My kids rode a little bit when they were younger, and nobody really rides anymore. Like my son's into snowboarding and the other one's into Surons a little bit and just kind of doing whatever. But when they were younger, it's like you were dad that you had all the knowledge. And now my son skis and I'm like, I can't teach you anything, dude. Take me and show me how to ski because I don't know how to do it. But it's cool, dude. It's cool for you to have the opportunity to be able to teach them so much and do this with them and show them the path, there's so much stuff in my career I look back on that I was if I had a path, if I had somebody at least putting a couple of the right things in my mind, I feel like I could have done better in certain aspects, not necessarily results, but maybe just how I handled life and how I interacted with it and everything. But just kind of went at it alone, same as you. And I think it's really cool that you have the ability to do this with your boys and go spend 8 months in Europe or a year or whatever it is, doing the racing with them and helping them. And man, they're only young once, man.
Yeah, I do. I feel very fortunate to do that. And I guess it's no different to, me following in my dad's footsteps of being a builder or a lot of people in New Zealand with farming. That would be, probably a really realistic way, compare it. There's so many people go farming because that's what's in the blood of a family, so it's, I guess, very similar in that sense with my boys. With all that being said though, it's because they want to do it, to be honest, I'm not chomping at the bit to be living in Europe. I can assure you of that. Not that I don't like Europe home, because I enjoy the family home that we're on. It's certainly not all roses. That's for sure. I just spent 9 hours in a van driving to pick something up and drive back, so it's not all roses, but I certainly enjoy the part of doing it with my boys and, like you said, having the ability to guide them and give them, knowledge and experience. And even on that, it's tricky at times, because everyone has to learn through their own experience as well. You can only teach and guide so much, and then each individual has to then have their own experiences and work it out and have that experience themselves, I guess.
For sure,
man. One thing kind of I was going to touch on a little bit later, but we're kind of already leading into it, is first of all, I think we're in this awesome time with motocross where we're going to get these superhuman kids come through, and we're already starting to see it with your sons, Chad Reed's kids, all the other professionals now had kids and they're coaching them just from day one. They're getting world-class coaching, so it's insane. But going on that topic is, obviously, with your career, you had a lot of highs and you also had some lows, with your injuries and all of that stuff. And with those ups and downs, has that changed the way you kind of directed your boys on their bike and the way you structure things for them?
100% from day dot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's some of those things?
So for me, I think the biggest influence I had on them right from the start, if you're going to ride a dirt bike, we're going to do it properly, and you're going to learn the correct skills right from the start to make sure that whether you do it on just any given Sunday or you do it as a profession, you do it correctly and put yourself in the best possible position in terms of what I value the sport is safety, and that's by using correct techniques and skills to be able to ride a dirt bike, ride or race a dirt bike. But certainly that was something that I just, from the start, for me, from the very first moment they started riding dirt bikes. And like I said, it didn't matter to me if they were going to race or not. It was just about making sure that they were sound in the way they rode it, so that, it lowers, I guess, the risk in a sense if you ride correctly with the right skills and understand how to do it correctly.
Yeah. Would you I know, like in my own experience, like when I look back at times where I've had like major injuries or whatever, you start to, like in hindsight, you can start to identify certain things that you're like, there was a bit of a red flag there. There was a bit of a red flag there. I probably shouldn't have done that, and you're like, kind of, it was inevitable that you're going to get injured that way. Do you recognize those things for yourself, and like, are you able to kind of, in a way, like work with things like that with your boys, and I guess a way for them to kind of recognize it, or keeping their focus and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, by far and away, they're my biggest. I guess my worst trait was I wanted to win every session, every lap, be the fastest I could at any given moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unfortunately where it came unstuck for me too many times. And I didn't learn from that. And I guess that's one of the things that, I've tried to really instill in my boys, is to just understand where the limit is, and try to be below that, and assess the risk of, when the time is right to push, and when it isn't, So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing that stands out from the lessons for myself, I guess you'd call it, and what I've tried to pass on to the boys. Yeah.
Yeah, that's epic. That kind of, like when I look at motocross and supercross, it seems like that is a real like kind of 90s and 2000s mentality. Probably 2000s morely, like just go out, win every single race, and then you watch guys now, it's like so much more methodical, and maybe so like that's why we're starting to see the guys actually race into their 30s like very competitively.
Absolutely, 100%. I've sort of been like assessing it, or like having that, I guess, that like helicopter view of the sport, and that is one thing. And if you just quickly move through the 2000s, like you said, there was this huge emphasis on physical training and the hours you put in, and then as you move later in, the 2000s and 2010, and there was a lot of emphasis on bikes and the setup, and the whole side of the engineering side of it, I guess you'd say. And then in the late sort of teens, we've moved into riding technique and the evolution of skills and what that does, and how you can control your riding with your technique a lot more. And I believe that's had a huge influence on the sport now in recent years. It's almost like a wave that we're riding right now, in terms of what you see on screen, Levi, and what you're referring to is the riders and the evolution in that area of the sport. And I do genuinely feel like it is a critical element that was probably overlooked to a sense, like we were looking, but I guess that's just the evolution of sport, right? And I think that was something that as soon as I stopped racing, I could see it. Oh, it's just like staring me straight in the face. But I think when you're in it and consume with it, it's hard to see it for how I see it now, I guess.
Where were we? Longevity of careers. So yeah, like I really like what I'm seeing. Like riders are riding into their 30s, and it's obviously happening in supercross and motocross, and like we're seeing it in freestyle as well. Like people are hanging around for a lot longer, and it's got to do with technology and people teaching and kind of spreading their knowledge, sharing their knowledge with everybody, which it's pretty epic to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that like it's probably in our sport, like just something that you can obviously start, like I said with my boys, start from the absolute beginning, and it puts them in such a better spot, as they start, I say career, but as they start their journey, right, with the sport, and I've been a huge believer in that. When I stopped racing, and like I said, it was just staring me blatantly in the face. As soon as I started coaching and passing on what I could see, for me, that was a huge part of the sport becoming better. And that, in the past, what is it now, 10 years since I've retired from racing.
And yeah, it always gets such a different view when you step away and you're not in the thick of it, eh? So when, like, you obviously retired in 16 and then you started Method Moto, like, how did that transition happen? Did you kind of have that in mind, or did it kind of just naturally happen with your boys, or were you already kind of coaching at that stage?
No, how it started actually is when I stopped racing, I obviously a Kiwi racer in New Zealand. And he was starting to, through that time that I was coaching him and mentoring him, he was starting to race internationally. And we were starting to use iPhones to like send footage backwards and forwards, and I'd like look for apps of how I could potentially draw on, the phones, and then I was coaching quite a bit in New Zealand at the time, a lot at the time, and basically that just morphed into, as we've seen in really the way that technology's gone with iPhones and cloud-based programs. I wanted to do something that I could do more than just one rider at a time, and that's where the idea was born for me, I guess. And I think that it's been a really cool way for me to put that all of what I have in my head, because I really like to coach one-on-one. That's something that I feel like I can really lock in, look at somebody and give them feedback on exactly what they're doing. And I think when we moved online, it allowed me to give everything out of my mind. Every individual can take time to, I guess, download that information, and that's how it started for me.
Yeah, man. I really like the way you've got your modules and how they're structured, in a degree of importance, what you should focus on first, and then build your foundations from. It's pretty epic how they've come out.
Yeah, for me, the foundation of riding a dirt bike is no different for a kid or any rider. I shouldn't say kid, anyone learning to ride a motorcycle today than it is to who won on the weekend, Ken Roxon, right? So
yeah,
I use Jet Lawrence as the model most of the time, because he is the model of how to ride a dirt bike in this day and age. And those core principles of riding a dirt bike, they don't change from that person learning today to the fastest rider on the planet. And they're still the same. They do not change.
You're talking about basically, sorry, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying correctly. You're talking about if somebody gets a bike and they want to learn how to ride, those initial beginning things that you're going to teach them right away to have balance, control, stability, and be able to start building speed on top of that. Those principles that you learn on day one are the principles that you still are refining, as you're not refining, but they're the base of Jet Lawrence's speed. Is that kind of what you were saying?
Yeah,
I agree.
100%. Yeah,
that's something I clicked to when I was watching your modules. I was like, how relatable they are. You could watch that as an absolute rookie, or you could watch that after riding bikes. I've been riding bikes 20 odd years. I mean, I'm a freestyle guy, definitely not a motocross guy, but I'm watching it, man. I'm pretty much taking notes for my next ride. There's so much stuff in there, I'm loving it. So it's pretty cool how vast it can go,
Yeah, and that's what that's, I guess, the base of my coaching and philosophy, right, was based on those real underlying skills of what you do with your feet or your hands or your vision. And they just apply if you're wanting to learn how to do it correctly from the start to, like I said, how Jet Lawrence does it. And I know for fact that the Lawrences, as an example, that they still work on those really, really core principles to this day, and each week and day that they practice as they prepare each week for their racing. So it's just part of, I guess, the fundamentals, the word I've been looking for. Those fundamentals are just so important to being, firstly, gaining confidence on a dirt bike, and then from there, as you progress, to then adding layers of speed on top of it.
Yeah, and without that sort of stuff that you're talking about, the roadblocks that you're going to hit in your speed and your control and everything, they're going to come so early. Just these couple little basic things to get you started can make such a difference. I feel pretty lucky, I'm not a racer guy either. We grew up racing locally. When I was a kid, we spent, 7 or 8 years probably racing every weekend of my life. But when I was a kid, before Mad Mike was a freestyle rider, he was a racer and he did a lot of racing in Europe, and he lived in our area, and I did coaching with Mad Mike when I was early enough that I knew nothing, and it was just the basics of don't look at your front fender, like you need to be looking out there and like, hey, do this with your arms and do this with your feet and like work on this with your body positioning and like just without that base, like the base information right at the beginning of my riding career. Because I was on 80s, I was only just starting to ride when we first met Mad and he helped us out. Without that stuff, like who knows if I would have done 3 years of riding without any idea what I'm doing and really cementing in horrible habits, like who knows if I ever would have like overcame that, you know what I mean? But like having it right off the bat, the basics of like control and a little bit of stability and then like how to go fast it's insanely important. And I know I'm saying this from a guy who's now a professional freestyle motocross rider and probably doesn't really need that stuff anymore, but like I needed it at the beginning. I needed it to build that skill, and I think it's massively important.
Yeah, I guess the way that I frame it is because I coached a lot of high performance kids, right? I really didn't coach a lot of beginners, so to speak. I did do some of that in the school holidays at times and whatnot. But I used to is that your ceiling is only measured by the base of your pyramid. Your pyramid, if you want that to be extremely high, then the base of that pyramid has to be really wide in terms of the way in which you use your fundamental skills. And that's I framed it. It didn't matter, I guess. So if I go back to what I said, I coached high performance. It didn't matter in that range of riders, their speed level. I used that same framework for all of them because that for me was, I guess, the way in which you're able to elevate that ceiling. For kids, I really used to talk about it like a house, right? I used to say you've got your concrete floor, your framing, and your roof. And I said, if you don't want your roof to leak, then your framing's got to be really sturdy. And if you want your framing to be really strong and straight, your concrete floor has got to be sound, right from the start. And those are those real base principles of where you have your feet, your hips, your hands, your eyes, how you grip with your knees on the bike or your legs. All of those things you have to do to ride correctly to learn correctly, and you have to use all of those same skills to be at the speed of Jet Lawrence, right? And that's why I always talked about your ceiling and using those real fundamentals right from day dot. And if you can, it just allows you to progress so much quicker. There was one kid, he races fiercely with my younger boy Jagger, and he didn't start riding until he was 9 years old, and I got hooked up with him really quickly, and he just absorbed all of that information just within the first 12 months, 15 months, 18 months, and just took off. And that's because all of those fundamentals he took on board, absorbed it, and they put a lot into him to progress with the time they put into him. But still, you don't get to go in that speed unless you understand and absorb that information to actually use those skill sets correctly. I guess I'm really strong on that view. Like, it just, in this day and age, to ride motorcycles as fast as these riders do. And I guess there's one thing, like, I don't ride very often at all, but when I go and ride now, after all these years of coaching and passing on this knowledge, if I really lock in and think about all of the knowledge that I've passed on and the way in which I've coached, I can still ride a motorcycle really quickly, instantly, because I'm using that skill set to the best of my advantage. Yeah.
Man, that's such a good way of explaining it and just simplifying it all. I've never thought about it that way, but it makes so much sense.
I reckon I ride a bike better now than when I ever did.
Really?
That's nuts.
Yeah.
That is pretty nuts.
I don't doubt it. Like, when I do see you ride, I'm like, holy crap. Like, this dude hasn't been racing in a long time.
I'm not as fast, like, I'm clearly not as fast, but in terms of actually the way I feel on the bike and what I want to achieve, at the age I am, when I say achieve, like in terms of when I go out there to ride and actually do on a motorcycle, yeah, I feel like I can ride a bike as best as I ever have, to be fair. And I think that's just genuinely through my focus is just so, I guess, it's almost overwhelming to what I'm doing with all of the fundamentals that allows me to to ride a bike like I do, I guess. And that's just because of the focus that I put into that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like this thing that you're talking about, you're working on with other people. You're, like you said, you're focusing on it so much that when you get on the bike, even without like doing the hands-on experience, you're like better at it than you were the last time.
Absolutely. My back doesn't think that 12 hours later when I'm sucking on Voltarens. But yeah, that is so accurate what you're saying. That's exactly how it is in my head, the way in which you just explained it.
Dude, it's crazy to me that the power of our minds and the ability that we have if we harness that, and it's another reason that I believe in like this online coaching thing, even though you don't have somebody right next to you, like we're going to put all this information out here for people to learn, to watch consistently, like, okay, I could go out with you and I could ride with one day, I could pay you for a 1-day training session, you could throw hours of information at me at which, unless I record it, I'll retain this much of it. Or I can, sign up to something like this and I can rewatch these videos over and over again. But the point I'm getting at is like, I think it's going to be so beneficial to people because like just really putting your mind to something and thinking a lot about something makes such an insane difference. And, me and Levi have talked about this before with like tricks and guys who like do tricks in their head. And it sounds like hocus pocus nonsense, but like I'm pretty sure they did a study on this with like pianos and people playing piano, right? And they had one group of people that actually practiced 10 minutes a week. They had a group of people that did nothing, and then they had a group of people that mentally trained for 10 minutes a week. And like the amount of improvement that was made between the people that mentally trained and physically trained was like, it was either even or maybe slightly better with the mentally trained people, but it's crazy. It went to show that like, I don't actually have to go to the riding spot and do the thing. If I can sit here and like mentally, like really focus on the task at hand and how it works, like I can get just as much benefit out of doing that right here in my chair. And that blows my mind. And like for you to say that about your riding being better now because you're so deep into the content that you're creating and working on is more validation of that being a fact, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think probably the key that you touched on that stands out to me is just the accessibility to it, right? So you've got it at your fingertips if you're on an online platform like Edge is, and you've got the accessibility to it at any moment in time, whether you're at the track or you're on the couch or you might even be, a break at work or it doesn't actually matter. I guess that's like, encompasses what I'm trying to say is like, it's just at your fingertips at any given moment, and I think that, like you said, Adam, that allows you to just become so in tune with it mentally, and that's where you get the biggest gain, like you said, going to a track and being coached for a couple of hours, but that takes weeks and months and years, to make that progress if you're committed to doing that. Whereas with an online platform, you're open to that knowledge and all of that knowledge to then, as much time as that you can allow yourself to use that knowledge, your ability to improve is just so much quicker in my mind.
I agree.
It blows me away, like it did at the beginning a lot, and it still does now, how well you can help someone without even being there, just by obviously having the base level tutorials, and then as well like them actually going out and trying it and then uploading the videos to review and then giving them critiques and feedbacks, and how quick someone can progress. And you don't need to be there. It's such a cool world we live in with that.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to that when you asked how did it start, and that's how it started, exactly like you just explained there, Levi. When I was doing that with Josiah, and I was like, whoa, like technology has taken us to this place now where you don't have to be there physically in some type of a school or whatever that may be, and whatever sport you're in, you can have access to this at your fingertips, and make that progress. And like I said, as much time as you're willing to invest into it with, the ability to be on a platform like this, then the world's your oyster to make those gains.
Yeah, definitely.
100%.
I have a question. Levi actually wrote this question down, so I'm going to steal it from him. But this is something I wonder about all the time. And it's whether or not you had a problem at first with like learning how to take all the knowledge inside your brain and pass it on to somebody. Because I think like some people have a hard time coaching, and some people it comes really natural. Like some people do a trick in freestyle motocross and you ask them how they do that, even just one professional to another. And I'm like, hey man, how'd you do that? And they're like, I don't know. Yeah, just you just do it. And it's like some people have a really hard time, but I also think that like even if you have a hard time, once you start focusing on it, then it's a skill that you build. You get better and better at like taking those little movements that you make and realizing them and explaining them. So the question is like, did you have a problem at first, like learning how to teach all the nuances and all the things? Did it come really naturally to you? Which one?
So I guess it's quite a long-winded answer there. I actually did quite a bit of coaching when I was a kid. There was quite a decent program as I was growing up. I was a young teenager, I don't know, 12, 13, and I started to get involved, and I quite enjoyed coaching at that age. This is, well before I was a professional. And then fast forward, to the other end of my career, and obviously, finished racing as a professional, and then, started coaching. And I guess the secret sauce for me, to answer your question, it's the way in which you articulate it, right? So you build that picture on your mind of watching someone. I guess this is coaching in the field, and you build that picture on what you see, and then being able to relay to the rider or the athlete, in whatever sport that is, that being able to relay the message of what you're doing, what you need to adjust to improve, and I think that's something that I believe is probably a real strength of mine, is being able to actually articulate the message in a way that the rider or the athlete can understand, that to then be able to then put into practice, what you've articulate to them. So I guess that's a long-winded answer, but I guess from my side, that's where I feel like I've been able to really understand coaching, I guess, from my side.
Yeah. What I'm wondering about that answer too is like, are you talking about this in the sense of like when you were coaching after you finished your professional career and you were doing more in-person stuff? Because to me, it seems even more impressive to be able, if this is what you mean, to be able to watch the guy, see exactly what he's doing, and then be able to give him an explanation of how to fix it. Yeah, that can be tough sometimes. I have a hard time with freestyle sometimes. I see guys like struggling to get like, if they're at certain levels, I see them struggling to start doing tricks, and it's like, I don't know what to tell you like at that level, So like I'll expand on that in a minute, but being able to look at them ride, see what they're doing, and know how to tell them what to do right seems very important and like a good skill as well.
I'm a crazy overanalyzer when I watch Supercross, like AMA Supercross. I was watching, I don't know when this is going to air, but I was watching Glendale Supercross last night. And I just like analyze every rider and what they're doing in terms of, let's say, just for example, use whoops as an example, where their heels are at, where their hips are at, where their head's at, and I just analyze it just crazy. I guess I really enjoy that, like it's something that I guess I've got an eye for, and it's something that I've just genuinely really enjoyed doing. I guess seeing that progression with a rider. Like the question you posed was in the field, like the way that you posed it. Yeah, that's what I really had an eye for, is watching someone do something and then saying. And I used comms when I was in the field, like exactly like this. I've been doing that now for probably almost 10 years, probably 8 years I've used comms. And I think that was like a real benefit, was being able to actually, for the rider not to stop. So I used to do it in really small, areas of the track. It might even be just one corner, just over and over and over. My boys laugh about it, like how many times some of the riders that I've coached have done this one corner at our local club track. But for me, it was about repetition and being able to understand the message of what the rider was needed to execute in that repetition. And I guess, repetition has been a huge part of it. But having the eye for it and then being able to articulate, I guess
Mm-hmm.
that's where I felt that was a real strength of mine. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Dude, the calms, that's really cool actually. I didn't even know that people did that, but that's so good to be able to just be like, "Hey, you sat down too early." To like stand up longer, like without them stopping, like you said, that's such a cool thing to do. I'm sure that helped guys a lot. But I agree that like, you said your boys joked about how many times they had to do that corner over and over again. But like that's what works, man. And that's what works in freestyle too is repetitions. Like you have to do a million of something before like you've gotta suck at this trick and suck at it a million times to where sucking at that trick is like completely brainless for you. And then all of a sudden you can level up that trick a little bit, right? Like it's brainless for me to do the trick at the level where it sucks. Now it's easy for me to go, okay, well I can extend a little more now because everything up to this point is second nature. And it's you don't get that with the reps in freestyle. You don't get it without the reps in racing. Like anything that we're doing is going to require a massive amount of reps. And as much shit as I've done wrong in my life and my career, like I think reps is one thing that I got right.
Yeah, I think that's what's such a massive benefit in this day and age with a smartphone as well. So if you're inside an online coaching platform like the Edge, you can be at the track, right? And this is motorcycle specific, but I guess it applies to all sports. But you can have someone filming, you can do 10 laps, right, of this one corner or whatever you're practicing. It could be whoops, braking zones, whatever it may be. Watch that film of yourself and then be able to look in the platform and say, well, my hips aren't in the correct position here, or my head needs to be there, and I think that's so invaluable in my mind of using technology and coaching and combining them together in this day and age. That just allows individuals to just exponentially improve in my mind. I mean, if it was me in that point of my life and I was wanting to improve, I think that I would just be so immersed in that, I would be addicted to it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean,
100%.
everybody's got their phones on them just all the time. And just buy a tripod, set it up, and record yourself, and then you'll get better in no time. Turns out phones are not only for scrolling Instagram. You can use them at great benefit for other things as well.
Say that
Yeah,
to my
man.
oldest son all the time. There's so much benefit in your phone outside of scrolling through Instagram.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any benefit inside scrolling through Instagram.
No, man. Man, that's funny talking about, like, I kind of knew what Ben's answers would be about, whether he found coaching easy or not. And just with, like, the way Ben is and his riding style, I'm like 100% he can do it because you're so detail orientated. Like, the way you talk about riding is the way I look at bikes the way you look at riders, like the engineering of it. That's kind of exactly what you're doing, is engineering the rider to be the best racer they could be, or the best rider that they can be. It's definitely, I think, like, we're all kind of natural at certain things, and I think the coaching side of it, from what I see, I know you've probably put a lot of work in to get to where you are with it, but you're just made for it, like your content is just so freaking epic to watch. Yeah, it jacks me up to go riding every time I see it.
The comment you just made about the engineering part and the way you watch the bike. So, like, if my boys or anyone I've coached in recent years asked me, what did you think about how the bike was doing, or even as an example, like the suspension guys that I work with with my son Levi or Jagger, they say, oh, what did you think of the bike? I say, well, I don't know. I don't really know how to watch the bike, nor do I actually even care about watching the bike too much. And this is in all honesty, because I'm just so fixated on what the rider is doing and how they're using their skill sets, and I can't even see what the wheels are doing or what the suspension's doing. That's not a word of a lie, because I'm just my eyes are just wired to what the body's doing. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's like such a different view that each of us can have in terms of what we see through our eyes, I guess. Yeah.
It's so cool that dirt bikes is still a motorsport where skill and talent can exceed the engineering of it. Like in motor racing, all sorts of motor racing, you can have the best driver in the worst car or whatever it is, and they're just not going to do good. But you put a bad driver in a good car, they're at least going to be mid-pack to, like, running top fives and stuff like that. So I love motocross for that reason.
It's so cool, eh? Like dirt bikes are still such a pretty balanced man versus machine. Like it's
Yes.
I think that's phenomenal, right? So again, just like if you just cross back to Supercross that was on yesterday, you've got Eli Tomac and Hunter Lawrence and Chase Sexton, right, on machines that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then you've got like Joey Savacci sitting beside them on the start line, and he's competitive with them on a somewhat similar machine, right? Doesn't have anywhere near the budget to go racing at that level, but he's still competitive, and that's because the man is just such a huge component, I still believe, of dirt bikes. And I don't know if that will really ever change, to be fair. Like if we look at MotoGP and Formula One, it's certainly become ever increasingly, in my view, more about the machine than the man, in my view. Not that you'll still always need a man to be able to wheel the machine, but motocross, it's still, electronics have had a major plan, and suspension has obviously improved, but not at the dramatic sort of percentage that we've seen in other forms of motorsport. I guess maybe I'm looking through rose-tinted glasses, but that's my view on it anyway.
Yeah,
No, I
I'm
agree with you on that.
100% with you on that one. So tell us a little bit about Cole Davies, and tell us about Cole Davies and your coaching with him and your experience with him. Like when I watch Cole, obviously I know you worked with him a lot, and he's like one of those modern day riders who's just like so good. Like he's hauling ass, but he doesn't even look like it, and that's because obviously like what we've been talking about, like he's learned correctly from day one.
Yeah, Cole, that was an awesome journey, and like I was so, because it was a quick journey, very quick. That was sort of right in the COVID times, and it got the plan of what we were going to do together got held up for a long time, as you know, Levi, in New Zealand through our situation with the cold COVID and lockdowns and the pandemic and whatnot. But once that was, I guess, behind us, we laid out a roadmap, and his parents were on board with that right from the start. He actually moved in with us semi full time. Like he lived at our place sort of Monday through Friday, and sometimes when racing was in our area, he'd stay sort of full time. But the roadmap was based around Supercross, and I've got a Supercross track at home, so the plan was to ride 4 days a week on the Supercross track, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, when weather would allow, and we just started right from the start, just the real, just the fundamentals of what he needed to be able to go to the level that he's currently at with those fundamentals. And I really enjoyed that process. I think probably the biggest thing that stands out with Cole by far and away is the information that he absorbs and how he can absorb that information and then execute what you've articulated to him. For me, he was the best that I've ever had anything to do with, and I've coached a lot of riders and over the past 10 years, and it's phenomenal. It's crazy the way that he absorbs it. He looks at you in this blank stare, and you think, man, like there's no way there's no way that he's absorbed that information.
Yeah. Oh,
And he's like a computer, man. The way that he processes it, and then he'll right away, or in my case, he would have been on comms, and he'll come back around, and you'll instantly start to see progress. Not saying that he perfectly and execute it to 10 tenths every time, but he was able to make very, very quick progress pretty much instantly in the next lap. And that was, I guess, what allowed him to progress so quickly. And that's, I guess, information, and is able to apply. And he's very measured, super measured. Like you don't say to him, hey, Cole, you got to do that quad over there. He wants to understand, certainly when we went through those very early stages of Supercross, understand the how and the why and the process to doing it. And I guess that's, just played right into my coaching and the way that I believe in my philosophy, really. So, yeah, just a very, very cool journey, something that I'm really proud to be involved. There are a lot of people involved along the way, but there were certainly some some tough love moments, to get over some hurdles. There's no doubt about that. But that's, I guess, part and parcel for any athlete that's aspiring to be at the top of the sport. And he's certainly, he's not there, but he's certainly on his way. And I think we're all waiting with bated breath to see what year 2 will bring, because year 1 was pretty phenomenal from him.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, man. It was so cool to see. Man, yeah, just to touch on him again, he's so, I'm just pumped as a Kiwi to have someone out there again, doing so well. But watching him last year was so sick. And the one thing that stood out to me the most was not even his riding. It was when he got taken out by Deegan at one of those last rounds. And all he said on the podium was he just owned it. It was my fault. I can't believe I rode so wide on that corner. I'm like, anyone else would be complaining about getting taken out or anything like that. I'm like, that kid's a champion for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I guess that's, the ability to analyze, like I was just saying, previously about him, he's able to analyze those scenarios really quickly. And I think, you saw that in that scenario there, even though that wasn't, wasn't something that you're referring to with his riding. It's just in the way in which he is as an individual. And, we worked through things really methodically with him and really broke the Supercross track down, in terms of just getting him started, because he'd ridden on a Supercross track. He probably was 14 at the time when he started with me, but we just broke it down into really small areas and just tried to really instill those good fundamentals. And then just like we were talking about before, Adam, just those reps, man. It was just so many reps of one corner and then one obstacle. And then once that was put together, it was the corner and the obstacle. So it was, a section of the track, and it was just repetition after repetition. He would have burned a lot of fuel at my house, that's for sure.
Seems like such a cool way to do it with Supercross, though. Rather than just taking a big, giant, intimidating Supercross track and being like, all right, just go do laps and we'll work on stuff, like breaking it down into small sections. That's much easier to, much less overwhelming that way. If you're young and you're just kind of getting into Supercross, right? Hey, we're going to figure out these big bull turns first, and then you're going to do 1,000 of those, and then we'll move on to rhythms, and then you're going to do 1,000 of those. That sounds cool. I like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting the way you put it, because I was always wanting for the opportunity to do it the way that I did it with Cole, in terms of, it was almost like a study case, in a sense that I'd seen the way in which you referred to it just then, Adam, as so many people just get out there and, just get started and just log some laps. And I did it, in quite a contrary form, in terms of when he started, it was just one lane that he started on that day. We weren't doing laps when he first started, and we just broke it down into those small pockets just to get a real understanding, and I guess get the reps. And if you've ever ridden Supercross, which a small percentage of, the riding world have, man, it is extremely taxing on the body. You can't just go out and just start logging some laps, and it's certainly when you're not comfortable as well. Your heart rate is just absolutely, your heart feels like it's coming out your chest after a couple of laps in Supercross, So I understood that the best way to approach it to me was to break it right down and just do it in really small pockets for him to get the understanding and then the confidence, with Supercross. And I think the biggest thing was to lower the risk. It's a risky sport, as we all know, and most action sports are risky, but what for me was a huge driver, and that was to lower the risk as much as possible, to make the most progress as we could. So that was a huge part of it for me.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to ask about is when you said when you were working with Cole and you had the comms on and you could tell him something and you could see immediate improvement towards what you told him. I was wondering about that with when he's riding. I mean, it's obviously he's not riding at 100%, but it seems like what pace is he riding at when he's able to be out there? Say he's riding at a pretty heavy pace and you tell him to change something and then he changes something. It seems like it's really hard to change stuff for me this is how I imagine it, without like really slowing down. Like years ago, I remember a buddy was teaching me something on guitar, and I was like, I was learning it, and I kept trying to go fast, and he's like, no, go slow. And I'm like, yeah, but what, I got to speed up. And he's like, no, dude, do it slow 1,000 times, and then you'll be able to do it fast. Like, I guess my question is, when Cole is doing this riding and you're on comms with him and you're telling him, hey, you did this in that turn, and he fixes it immediately, do you think he's going slow? Do you think he's got 50% left in the tank? Or is he like one of those psychopaths that can be riding at 80% and still adjust and correct his form at that speed?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I guess like in the early stages of Supercross, the way in which you were talking about the piano in terms of, in that relation. With Supercross, obviously doubling is fairly easy, and tripling, there's quite a lot higher risk and a lot more, technical, to triple, right? So with the doubling, you can certainly attain similar feeling and understanding for what you're doing with doubling. So that's how we started on a Supercross track. And if you, I guess, compare that to a motocross track, you can do things at a slower pace to a certain extent on dirt bikes. But what I feel, and this is where I guess I've been quite, strong in my philosophy of if you're doing things and you understand how to do it correctly, you can do it fairly close to your what is perceived your best pace or your fastest riding. And that's how you get an understanding of whether you're able to execute it correctly and be able to make the gains. Because I think that's where most people live is, am I able to make that gain, right? So you've got to have a feeling for it. And if you're hitting a set, like let's say use a set of whoops, for example, you can't do that at a slow pace. So you've got to be able to do it at a pace where you can understand what you're trying to change or execute and feel that gain from doing it, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I have it in my.
It all made sense until you started talking about whoops, and that's like just the most terrifying thing in the world on a motocross or supercross track. When we did speed and style for a couple of years, I remember like going to my local buddy's track who had like a kind of mini supercross style track, and he had a set of whoops, and I'm like, all right, I have to learn whoops for speed and style, and it was the worst time of my life, dude. I'd rather forget about it.
Yeah, okay, so you're right. That's a wrong analogy. So let's use a deep sort of rutted technical rut in a corner, right, on a motocross track. Use that as an example. Now, you can go in there and I can tell you, hey, you need to have long vision. Your leading leg needs to be from your knee to your foot, needs to be up and turned into the motorcycle. You need to be applying good pressure with your outside foot. You need to be seated in the pocket of the seat. Your hands need to be turned out, one finger on the clutch, one finger on the brake, right? Now you can do that at a slower speed, but the point that I was trying to make is to do that at a faster speed and to improve, all of that needs to be applied. You can't expect to go faster and some of those fundamentals fall away. Well, you can't execute what you're intending to execute if you don't apply those fundamentals like I just explained. And that's how you start to feel the improvement, right? If you're able to apply all of those pieces to the puzzle, that's when you really start to see the gains being made.
Yeah. I heard James Stewart was a two finger on the clutch guy. Have you ever heard this before?
He was no finger on the clutch most of the time.
Really?
Oh, man.
I think it was one of the more recent Supercross rounds because like I always am two fingers as well. And like, I feel like the boner for doing that. But then I was watching Supercross and James was like, hey man, I use two fingers on the clutch. And I'm like, yes, win.
No, he was renowned like in the whoops for using no left fingers on the clutch. It was crazy. Just a full death grip through the whoops, which is like an absolute no-no, Yeah. I always wonder, like, if he would go back and the one crash that stands out of his, and there's a few that probably, he's had a few in his time, but the one crash that really stands out at Anaheim, I think Roxon was leading on a KTM. He was number
Suzuki,
7,
right?
Suzuki, and he absolutely whiskied and lost control. Now, if he'd had a finger on the clutch, middle finger or pointer finger, he would have more than likely been able to control that scenario.
Yeah.
More than likely. And that happened so many times in his career where he lost control of the motorcycle just because he was just a full death grip.
Yeah, I can't talk smack on anybody in the whoops, man. If you'd seen me go through whoops, you'd be like, I got nothing to say. What else you got, Levi? Anything else?
One thing that I was thinking about, like, once you had started your modules, Ben, and you obviously had your content, and then you're also coaching people one-on-one, did you have them watch them first? Like, since we've started Edge, well, when we started as FMX Legends, and we started getting our tutorials in the app, and Adam's made a ton of trick tutorials, I pretty much, anyone that comes to ride at my house now and they're starting freestyle, I'm like, watch your tutorials, and then we'll talk. Because there's so much for them to learn before I can even start helping them on the ground. Is that something that you did back then, or you noticed any changes with that?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I think probably the biggest part of that is like the visual connection to learning, so you can get an understanding. And I guess that's the reference that I made, a few minutes ago about using an iPhone. Like, if you're able to actually, log into Edge and look at the modules like you're referring to, Levi, and then you're able to like visually see that, and then you go out and you're trying to replicate that. You have a visual painting on your mind of what you're trying to achieve. So yeah, absolutely, I think that's like a huge benefit to riders to be able to like paint that picture in their mind. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I agree.
That's actually making even more sense to me now. Like, it kind of plays into the fact of, like, in our world of freestyle, like, a new trick takes so long to learn for the first person, and the second person learns it very quickly because they see it and they can understand it without, having to essentially invent it. So yeah, no, it's quite a cool point.
I think about that a lot.
And I think,
sorry.
Yeah, I think that for me, that's been like a huge part of the online world. And I just think that like there's just so much potential for progress because of that, Levi. Like you said, like you're talking about that in the freestyle world. And I'm talking about in the dirt, the moto world or supercross. Like, it's the ability to make that progress is just so much quicker, I believe, in this day and age in these platforms.
Dude, yeah. With a little bit of dedication to like just taking in knowledge, I think the same thing. You can make so much improvement so much faster, and it has such little requirements. It's just a little bit of your time to sit down and digest information, and like you said, digest it numerous times. Like, you've got the app, you've got the monthly subscription, you got whatever it is, whatever way you're learning, don't just watch it once and then put it away. Like, if that's how you're doing it, you're not really that concerned with getting much better, But if you want to like analyze this, watch it, memorize it, feel it in your head, like, you're going to be able to make massive improvements in a short amount of time.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point that Levi just brought up about watching it. Is like, I've had so many parents say to me, they use it on the side of the track in terms of like they're trying to help their son or daughter at the track, and they go out with a purpose to improve. Let's say they're braking, and then they can actually pull them over on the side of the track and say, hey, like, this is what you're doing, in terms of some footage that they have on their device, and then flick over into Edge and say, right, this is what it looks like, and so they're able to really real time use it, like you said, Levi, to actually see that picture in their mind of what they need to achieve.
I didn't even think about that, and like, what a way for the families to be involved. If like the mom or dad want to be involved in their kids' progression in motocross, but they don't have the background or the skills, it's like, I didn't even think about it that way, that like mom and dad can be using it, watching and going, oh, you're not doing this, so this is what you need.
Yeah, no, I never thought about that either.
And there's so many of those stories like that, and they're like, it really like just flattens the ability to have an argument or feedback from their son or daughter about it.
Oh, sick. Well, is there anything else you kind of want to touch on there, Adam?
I just want to ask Ben, have you ever done any tricks before, Ben? Heel clicker, can, knack.
So when I was a kid, the local track I grew up on, there were these two main jumps. One was called Center Point and one was called Dam. They were the two jumps, and decent sized jumps in New Zealand, and I used to just lap those suckers out like all day long. I used to always attempt heel clickers and knack-knacks. It was like I used to attempt that. So I wouldn't say that I could fully complete them, but I used to attempt them. So what I'm saying is complete them, like I couldn't, or probably because of my flexibility, I couldn't touch my heels together. But I get pretty close. And then with the knack-knack, I could always get my foot round resting on top of the guard, but there's no way it was swinging off the other side of the motorcycle. But yeah, I guess that was the era, right, when the final lap of Supercross was all about some type of freestyle. That was the early days of freestyle, probably, right? So yeah, as a kid growing up watching that, that's what I thought I needed to be putting some time into, I guess.
Apparently that's what I thought I needed to be too, man, because it was like every lap, that was the only thing I was thinking about was that finish line jump. What am I going to do this lap?
Yeah, Adam and I took it too far. Do Levi and Jagger do any tricks?
No, we were so funny. We were talking about this, and Jagger was telling me, man, I really want to do a knack-knack. And Levi said to him, I haven't seen you try that. And I don't know, there was a bit of banter about it. This was actually yesterday or today, actually. So yeah, I think it interests. I don't think it interests Levi, but it certainly interests Jagger. Jagger can do a pretty mean backflip out of a tree at the lake or off a swing at the lake. So he's got them down pat.
Nice. He's our guy.
That's funny. Yep, we're recruiting him.
I won't send you my attempt out of the swing at the lake this summer. That's going to end up on fails if it gets anywhere near my boys' phones, I'd say.
It sounds like it'd be mine and Adam's attempt at whoops.
Yeah, I made sure those videos don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Terrible. Well, we went pretty long there. What do you think, Levi? You got anything else?
No, I feel like we kind of touched on everything there, and I know that Ben's had a pretty huge day already, and he'd be itching to get to bed now. Yeah, thank you for joining us, Ben. I'm really excited about what we've got going with Edge and having you on as a coach for Moto, and I really enjoy watching your modules. Like I said to Adam when I was uploading them to the app, I'm like, man, I'm going to go out and ride and practice this stuff. And I've been riding for 20 odd years, and it's like, man, I could still go learn so much. So I really appreciate having you on board.
Yeah, cool. It was great to chat, and do it again soon.
Absolutely, man. Hell yeah. Well, awesome talking to you. Please don't hang up when we hit the end here, but I am stoked to have you on board as a coach as well. And I agree with everything Levi said, man. It's been cool to get to know you and talk to you today. And till next time, man.